Um, that's a painting by a friend of mine. Just a great friend of mine. It's a great painting. Anyway, so don't be disturbed by it or distracted by it. I'm not reading this one today because too lazy. I In 2019 I flew from where I live in the States, in New Jersey, into Croatia, Zagreb, to visit some friends, and it was a very long flight. It's not so long. You fly to London, then you get out, and then you change planes at Heathrow, which is no picnic. And then I got on the second flight, and I hadn't slept all night as usual, and so I was very tired, and flew on into Zagreb, and I tried to sleep on the flight, but I heard this extraordinary conversation between a British chap who was part of a building gang, and they were on their way to Bosnia, I believe, to go on a whitewater canoeing holiday. They called it. There's five or six of them, and the guy behind me, one of the builders, was having a conversation with this with a Bosnian woman. Actually, she had a slight accent. She was flying in with her husband, who was had been in the Chicago Police Department. I picked all this up because they introduced each other to each other. And anyway, so I was listening to this conversation, trying to sleep, but then the conversation was just so interesting. And part of the interestingness about it was the chap behind me who had a broad Cockney accent was obviously somebody of such rare intelligence. And I run into this a lot. I run into this particularly in England. I would run into this once a week. Somebody who sounded like not what they spoke, what they thought, because I like everybody has been conditioned to believe that super intelligent people speak in a certain way, and they don't. And it wasn't just his intelligence; it was his sort of the attention he was paying to this woman, and the perceptiveness and the gentleness with what he was saying, and the gentleness with which he was saying it. So I was struck by it. And then another one of the chaps chimed in, and he was obviously a much more normal type person, and he could have been speaking in any accent, because there are less interesting people, no matter what class you're engaging with. Anyway, so that's that part of the story. Then I got to the airport in Zagreb, and I was going through customs, and the Slavs have a reputation for a certain kind of looseness, and it's always very very welcome. And this. So anyway, they made some jokes about my bag or something like that, and they waved me on through. And I could have been carrying a broadside of artillery in one of my bags. You know what I mean? Anyway, and that contrasted with another trip that I had made into Geneva, so much more ho. And I'd flown direct from New Jersey, so I was in better shape. But I got to the customs, and I got that thing. I got that sort of, yes, I am the customs officer. You know, and and especially when I haven't slept very well, I tend to find things funny and joke and stuff like that. But I was struck by this professional distrust. He looked at me as if I was a terrorist, and he had no reason to look at me that way. I looked similar to how I look now. Maybe I had a clean shaven, maybe a bit more hair. I'm not an intimidating size or whatever. And I did consider at the moment that I may be just a little bit loosey goosey, and this guy maybe he has a personal problem with that, and there are obviously types who have that kind, not Slavs. But so anyway, so I just reflected on that if I had been, good Lord, Middle Eastern looking or black or anything like that, and it's not so much how he might have responded, but how a lifetime of that kind of response from officialdom creates a very strange culture. Anyway, so the main theme of what I was thinking about is that a lot of people in the world right now are talking about the state of the world, which is not good. Let's be honest. But it's always, and I've been through this before on this medium, is that it's always somebody else's fault. And so James O'Brien, my lovely British broadcaster, is very bright chap, was talking about the terrorism that's going on in the world, and the this and the Hamas, and that's how he says Hamas, and the the murderous thugs who were exonerated, pardoned by Donald Trump, or the murderous thugs who did this and did that, and he's sort of quite sincerely, he's 50 something, so he's no chicken, but he's the generation younger than I suppose, and he's very successful, and on in a public on the radio, so which is fantastic, and he's quite Socratic sometimes. But this default position that we have, that when things are going on in the world, we have to identify and isolate those who are causing it. So I just looked at his bibliography. He's written some books. In 2014, he wrote "Loathe Thy Neighbor." In 2018, he wrote How to Be Right in a World Gone Wrong. Then in 2020, he wrote How Not to Be Wrong, The Art of Changing Your Mind. Well, that's good. And then in 2023, How They Broke Britain. And I haven't read any of them. I'm just going on the titles and his presentation on his program. And I guess I must have thought when I was growing up, I must have been through this myself. I think I must, but I don't think I ever really did. I don't think I ever really could. There's some gear in me that just won't flip, a switch that won't flip. I was going to watch a piece of television that I'd done recently, and I thought, I'm not going to watch it because I just, it's always so disappointing. And you can watch your work, and you can say, you have an option. You can watch it and you can say, God, they used they shot me the wrong way round, and they did this and they did that, and God, I look awful. And the truth is or the story I tell myself is that I didn't bring my best game that day. In other words, I allowed them, if they were predisposed to do that, I allowed them to use some bad takes because I delivered of bad takes. So it's my fault, and I don't feel any element of self-persecution or God, I'm awful. I just feel like they're doing their thing with the best will in the world, and I know what TV is, and because I don't watch it. I mean, I'm not drawn to watch it. So I should have known. But it's just, I guess it's just that idea that James O'Brien's the murderous thugs who were part of the insurrection on January the 6th. That's all projection. He's not met one of them. He was not present there. He wasn't present at the trials. He doesn't, and how that predisposition, which so many of us seem to adopt, like, watching MSNBC, which I used to watch devoutly through the Obama years and stuff like that. I mean, I found them, they're on my side. But I watch them now and I just go, this is extraordinary. Because, and if they're concerned about things like conspiracy theories, there is no greater conspiracy theory than this sort of satanizing of, people do awful things. No, we don't all do awful things. I've certainly not done an awful thing. I've done, relatively bad. Oh, no, I have. Apparently, some people, I have done some awful things by not voting in a certain way. That ended up getting me canceled and dismissed and raged at and stuff like that. And once again, one just has to say, ain't nothing I can do about that. I voted, as the cliche goes, I voted in my own best interest. And this has obviously been preoccupying me for weeks, or as it turns out, it's sort of in my system anyway. These things slowly develop, probably incited by what I have written and what I have said. And, so it gets on a roll. But I find that predisposition, and it either it is due to the indoctrination of particular religions, or it is a reflection of a predisposition that we might have had before Jesus or Moses or whoever you want to call Muhammad, before the big, and Jesus didn't seem to be, well, he did actually. That's not true. He was very condemning of certain kinds of people. But if it seems to me, without the thing, oh, can't we all just get along kind of idea, which is not my idea at all. I have I feel tremendously grateful to be able to afford to be as marginal as I am. It would be very difficult for me. It would be more, and maybe that's part of the thing, is I think for people to participate in the culture that we have, which is just not very strong. You know what I mean? Not if you're the I play by the rules. I think the people who play by the rules in the culture, the Western culture, have a really, really hard time, because there's not a lot of payoff. And by payoff, I do not mean financial. That's part of the problem. There's you keep running into Swiss customs agents all the time. And it's funny, when you come back into Newark, they kind of try and do it there. They try to do it there, because Newark, coming back into the States, always takes forever. They're really not very good at that. And it's got nothing to do with the numbers. Heathrow is much quicker at it. And tons of people coming into London. So that's not really what it is. It's something else. But they'll have fun. This guy, this Swiss customs agent, was absent fun. He must have practiced to be so unfun his whole life. And it makes me think, like going through one's next in the public world, in pubs, in out in the street, nearly 69 years of that life I've had, and And I have to say that a single handful. And don't imagine that you can make the accusation that, you've led a pampered life, you've led a materially affluent life and all the rest of it. Because I fucking haven't. Things are good right now, but they haven't always been good. And I lived in neighborhoods that you would not have dreamed of living in. You would have said, "Oh, you should have a tank. You should build a wall." And I didn't. And so anyway, I could count on one hand in 69 years the number of encounters I've had of real malice or malevolence. And probably 4 of them were customs agents going through airports. Anyway, more on this later. It was just an improvise.